God's charge to Joshua, following Moses' death. The immense responsibility of leading Israel into the Promised Land falls to Joshua. As he stands at the edge of Canaan, God speaks directly to him, offering both encouragement and instruction. The Lord's message is clear: be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Joshua 1:6. God reiterates this charge multiple times, emphasizing the necessity of courage and strength, not merely in battle, but in unwavering obedience to His word. God's command comes with a promise: as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you, nor forsake you. Joshua 1:5. This assurance is crucial for Joshua, as he is stepping into a role once held by the man who brought Israel out of Egypt, parted the Red Sea, and met with God face to face. Now, Joshua is tasked with leading Israel into the land that has been promised to them for generations. God's presence with him, just as it was with Moses, serves as both a comfort and a foundation for his confidence. Moreover, God instructs Joshua to meditate on the book of the law, day and night, and to obey all that is written in it. Success, God explains, will not come from military might alone, but from a life deeply rooted in God's word. Joshua is to lead the people by example, grounding his actions in faith and obedience. This moment solidifies Joshua's role as both a military leader and a spiritual guide, reminding him that his true strength comes from his commitment to God. When the time comes for Israel to cross into Canaan, God directs Joshua to perform a miracle reminiscent of Moses' parting of the Red Sea, affirming Joshua's leadership in the eyes of all Israel. The Jordan River stands as a barrier between Israel and their promised inheritance, but God commands Joshua to have the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant ahead of the people. As soon as the priest's feet touch the water, the river miraculously stops flowing, allowing the people to cross on dry ground. Joshua 3:13-17. This miraculous crossing demonstrates God's continued presence, with Joshua and his power to make a way even through seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The significance of this crossing goes beyond a mere act of divine intervention. The Ark of the Covenant, which represents God's presence among His people, leads the way, emphasizing that it is God who is taking Israel into the land. By obeying God's command, Joshua not only solidifies his role as Israel's leader, but also sets the tone for the conquest ahead. Victory will be achieved through obedience to God's guidance. Once the entire nation has crossed, Joshua commands the people to take 12 stones from the Jordan's riverbed and set them up as a memorial at Gilgal. These stones serve as a lasting reminder of God's power and faithfulness, a symbol for future generations of the miracle that allowed Israel to enter Canaan. Joshua explains, in the future, when your descendants ask their parents, "What do these stones mean?" tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. Joshua 4:21-22. This act of remembrance not only honors God's provision, but reinforces the importance of keeping God's deeds at the forefront of Israel's memory and identity. Before the Israelites can begin the conquest of Canaan, God instructs Joshua to renew the covenant with his people. The first step in this renewal involves circumcision, a practice that had been neglected during the years in the wilderness. Joshua leads the people in this sacred act at a place called Gilgal, re-establishing their identity as God's covenant people. Joshua 5:9. This renewal of circumcision symbolizes the people's commitment to God and sets them apart from the surrounding nations as a people who belong to the Lord. After the circumcision, Joshua and the Israelites celebrate the Passover, a reminder of God's deliverance from Egypt. This Passover is especially meaningful, as it is their first in the Promised Land. It represents a transition from their identity as wandering ex-slaves to a nation established in the land promised to their ancestors. By observing the Passover, they remember God's faithfulness and acknowledge that their deliverance and inheritance come solely from His hand. At this point, another significant event occurs. The manna, which had sustained Israel throughout their wilderness journey, ceases. Joshua 5:12. From now on, they will eat from the produce of the land of Canaan. This shift signifies the end of their wilderness season and the beginning of a new chapter, where they will settle in and cultivate the land. The provision of manna had been a daily reminder of their dependence on God, but now, having entered the Promised Land, they begin to experience the fullness of God's blessings as they partake of the land itself. Through these acts of covenant renewal, Joshua unifies the people under God's law and reminds them of their identity and purpose. Their dedication to God is reaffirmed, establishing a foundation of faith that will carry them through the challenges ahead. As they stand on the threshold of battle, these moments of preparation, obedience to God's charge, crossing the Jordan, and covenant renewal, cement their reliance on God as they move forward into the land that He has prepared for them. As the Israelites prepare to conquer their first major city in Canaan, God gives Joshua specific and unusual instructions for capturing Jericho. Jericho is heavily fortified, its walls thick and seemingly impenetrable. Rather than devising a traditional military strategy, Joshua receives a divine plan that tests the faith and obedience of the Israelites. God instructs Joshua to have the people march around the city once a day for 6 days, with 7 priests carrying trumpets made of ram's horns, and leading the way in front of the Ark of the Covenant. The soldiers are to remain silent as they march, and no one is to make any sound except the priests blowing their trumpets. Joshua 6:1-4. On the 7th day, God commands the Israelites to march around the city 7 times. At the end of the 7th circuit, the priests are to give a long blast on the trumpets, and Joshua instructs the people to shout. At that moment, the miraculous happens. The walls of Jericho collapse, allowing the Israelites to charge straight into the city and capture it. Joshua 6:15-20. This victory is a powerful display of God's might and a testament to the effectiveness of faith and obedience. Joshua's leadership and Israel's willingness to follow God's seemingly strange command result in a resounding victory. Joshua ensures that the people follow God's instructions regarding the spoils of Jericho. Everything within the city is to be devoted to destruction as a holy offering to God, with the exception of Rahab and her family, who are spared due to her courageous help to the Israelite spies. By obeying God's commands precisely, the Israelites experience a profound victory, which strengthens their faith as they continue their conquest of Canaan. Following the triumph at Jericho, Joshua sets his sights on the smaller city of Ai. Confident from their recent victory, Joshua sends only a small contingent of troops to attack Ai, expecting an easy win. However, the Israelites are shockingly defeated, and 36 men are killed. Confused and distressed, Joshua falls before God, asking why they have suffered such a setback. God reveals that Israel has sinned by disobeying the command to devote all of Jericho's spoils to him. An Israelite named Achan has taken some of the forbidden treasures and hidden them in his tent, bringing guilt upon the entire nation. Joshua 7:1-12. To address this sin, Joshua gathers the people, and through a process of casting lots, Achan is identified as the guilty party. When confronted, Achan admits to taking a beautiful robe, silver, and a bar of gold, items that he hid under his tent. Joshua has Achan and his family brought to the valley of Achor, where they are punished for their disobedience, restoring purity to the camp and removing the cause of God's displeasure. With the sin now dealt with, Joshua receives new instructions from God to attack Ai. This time, God allows the Israelites to take the spoils as their own, showing that He provides for His people when they walk in obedience. Following God's strategy, Joshua sets an ambush around the city, luring the men of Ai out with a feigned retreat. When the soldiers of Ai pursue the Israelites, the hidden Israelite forces capture the unprotected city and set it ablaze. Israel emerges victorious, and the once discouraging defeat is turned into a powerful reminder of the importance of obedience to God. Joshua 8:1-29. As Joshua's reputation spreads throughout Canaan, the surrounding nations begin to fear the power of Israel and their God. In response, the Gibeonites, a nearby people, devise a cunning plan to protect themselves. Disguising themselves as travelers from a distant land, they wear worn-out clothing, carry moldy bread, and present themselves to Joshua and the Israelites as ambassadors from a faraway country seeking a peace treaty. Believing the deception, Joshua and the leaders of Israel make a covenant with the Gibeonites, agreeing to let them live and promising not to harm them. Joshua 9:3-15. After years of battle and conquest, the main resistance in Canaan has been subdued, and Israel stands on the brink of fulfilling the promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joshua's role as Israel's leader shifts from military commander to wise administrator, as he oversees the distribution of the land among the 12 tribes of Israel. This is a crucial step in establishing Israel as a settled nation, rooted in a land of their own. The division of the land marks the beginning of a new chapter, one of inheritance, settlement, and stewardship. God instructs Joshua to allocate the land, and with the help of Eleazar the priest and tribal leaders, Joshua begins the process by casting lots, a method that emphasizes God's sovereignty in the distribution. Joshua 14:1-2. Each tribe's territory is determined not by personal preference or power but by divine guidance, ensuring that every tribe receives an inheritance according to God's will. Joshua is meticulous in his duty, ensuring fairness and respecting God's instructions, which had been given to Moses before his death. The land is divided among the 12 tribes, except for Levi. Each tribe receives a portion according to its size and needs, with larger tribes receiving more land and smaller tribes less. Judah receives a large section in the south, including Jerusalem, while Ephraim and half of the tribe of Manasseh settle in the fertile central highlands. The other half of Manasseh, along with the tribes of Reuben and Gad, inherit land east of the Jordan River, which Moses had allotted to them before the Israelites crossed the Jordan into Canaan. Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, and Naphtali are given territories in the northern regions, while Simeon and Dan inherit portions in the south and central areas. Benjamin receives a small but strategically important territory between Judah and Ephraim, providing a buffer and facilitating unity between these powerful tribes. Joshua 13:19. During the division, special attention is given to Caleb, one of the original 12 spies and a faithful follower of God. Caleb approaches Joshua and reminds him of God's promise to give him the land where he had once scouted. Despite his advanced age, Caleb requests the challenging hill country of Hebron, still inhabited by formidable Anakites. Inspired by Caleb's faith and courage, Joshua grants him Hebron as his inheritance, fulfilling God's promise to him. Joshua 14:6-15. Caleb's request and his determination to take the land reflect his unwavering faith and serve as an example to the rest of Israel. As the land is divided, Joshua establishes cities of refuge, which had been mandated by God through Moses. These 6 cities, 3 on each side of the Jordan River, are strategically located to provide sanctuary for anyone who accidentally kills another person. Joshua 20:1-9. In ancient Israel, a close relative of the deceased, known as the Avenger of Blood, had the right to pursue and execute the person responsible. The cities of refuge, however, allow those who unintentionally cause a death to seek protection until they can stand trial. If found innocent of intentional murder, they are permitted to remain in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest, at which point they may return home in safety. This system of refuge underscores God's commitment to justice, mercy, and the sanctity of life. By providing these cities, God ensures that justice is tempered by mercy and that innocent blood is not shed in the land. The cities of refuge also act as a safeguard against personal vengeance, promoting a culture of lawful justice rather than retribution. In addition to the cities of refuge, Joshua assigns cities to the tribe of Levi, who are set apart as Israel's priests and teachers. Since the Levites do not receive a designated tribal territory, God instructs Joshua to distribute 48 cities among the tribes for the Levites to inhabit, including the 6 cities of refuge. Joshua 21:1-42. The Levites are strategically placed throughout Israel, ensuring that every tribe has access to spiritual guidance, worship, and instruction in God's laws. By placing the Levites in various cities across the land, Israel establishes a spiritual foundation, reminding each tribe of its covenant relationship with God. These Levitical cities serve not only as places of residence but also as centers of worship, education, and community life. The Levites play a vital role in Israel's spiritual health, leading sacrifices, teaching the law, and serving as judges. Their presence in each tribal territory helps unite the people under God's commandments, creating a shared faith and purpose across Israel. With the land distributed, each tribe begins to settle into its allotted territory, constructing homes, cultivating the land, and establishing communities. The fulfillment of God's promise to give Israel a homeland is finally realized, as the people transition from a wandering nation to a settled one. rooted in the land God promised their ancestors. The transition to settlement signifies a season of rest, but it also brings new responsibilities. Each tribe is called to remain faithful to God, to uphold His commandments, and to worship Him alone. For Joshua, this moment is a culmination of years of leadership, faith, and obedience. He has led Israel through the wilderness, guided them into Canaan, conquered their enemies, and now he witnesses the fulfillment of God's covenant promises. Joshua's leadership has ensured that each tribe has a place to call home, a land to cultivate, and a legacy to pass on to future generations. However, Joshua warns the tribes of the importance of remaining faithful to God. He understands that the blessing of the land is conditional upon Israel's obedience and devotion. If the people turn to the gods of the surrounding nations, or break their covenant with the Lord, they risk losing the land that has been given to them. This charge is a reminder that the true strength and prosperity of Israel lie not in their own power, but in their relationship with God. In a final act of unity and worship, the people gather at Shiloh, where the tabernacle, the dwelling place of God, is set up. Here, Israel rededicates itself to God and celebrates the fulfillment of His promises. Shiloh becomes the religious center for Israel, a place where the tribes come to worship, offer sacrifices, and seek God's guidance. The division of the land among the tribes, the establishment of cities of refuge, and the assignment of Levitical cities collectively lay the foundation for Israel's identity as a nation set apart for God. Each tribe, with its unique inheritance, is woven into the fabric of a united people, bound by their covenant with God and their shared heritage. Joshua's legacy as a leader is sealed, not only in military conquest but in the spiritual and communal life of Israel. With the land now at rest and the people settled, Israel enters a new chapter in its history, one defined by stewardship, faithfulness, and the call to live as a light to the nations around them. As Joshua grows old and senses that his time is nearing its end, he feels a deep responsibility to leave Israel with a lasting reminder of their calling and covenant with God. Over the years, Joshua has watched Israel transition from a wandering people to a nation settled in the Promised Land. He has witnessed God's miracles, experienced His guidance, and led Israel to victories that were only possible through divine intervention. Now, he calls the leaders, elders, judges, and officials of Israel together for a final assembly, eager to leave them with words of wisdom and encouragement. Joshua 23:1-2. In his final address, Joshua speaks with the authority of a seasoned leader and the heart of a spiritual father. He begins by reminding the people of all that God has done for them, recounting how the Lord fought for Israel and brought them into a land they did not toil to cultivate, filled with cities they did not build. He emphasizes that every success Israel has experienced is because of God's faithfulness. You have seen everything the Lord your God has done for you. It was the Lord your God who fought for you, he tells them, anchoring his speech in the truth that their victory was due to God's power, not their own might. Joshua 23:3. Joshua warns Israel against the dangers that lie ahead, not from foreign armies, but from spiritual compromise. He knows the threat of idolatry is real, as Israel is surrounded by nations that worship other gods. He urges the people to remain separate from these nations, and to hold fast to the Lord, reminding them of the consequences of disobedience. Be very strong. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, without turning aside to the right or to the left, he exhorts them. Joshua 23:6. Joshua knows that if Israel turns to the gods of the surrounding nations, they will lose their unique identity as God's people, and forfeit the blessings of the land. With unwavering conviction, Joshua calls on the people to love and obey God with all their hearts. He tells them plainly that if they break their covenant, God will no longer drive out their enemies, but allow these nations to become snares and traps for them. Joshua's warning is both sobering and clear. The blessings of the Promised Land are tied to Israel's faithfulness. If they turn away, they risk losing everything they have gained. Understanding the importance of renewing Israel's commitment, Joshua leads the people to Shechem, a place steeped in history and symbolic significance. It is here that God first promised the land to Abraham, and it is here that Jacob once settled, burying foreign idols, and dedicating his household to God alone. Joshua gathers all the tribes, and in this hallowed location, he challenges them to renew their covenant with God, Joshua 24:1. Joshua begins by recounting Israel's history, from the days of their ancestors worshipping other gods in Mesopotamia to God's call of Abraham and the miraculous journey that brought them to Canaan. He reminds them of how God led them out of Egypt, guided them through the wilderness, and gave them victories over mighty nations. Joshua wants the people to understand that their story is one of divine grace, a testament to God's faithfulness across generations. By recounting their past, Joshua emphasizes that they are a people chosen and sustained by God alone. At the heart of his message, Joshua issues a powerful challenge. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped, and serve the Lord. Joshua 24:14. He calls them to make a decisive choice, urging them to reject the idols of the nations around them, and to commit themselves wholeheartedly to the Lord. Joshua makes his own stance clear, declaring, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Joshua 24:15. His words resonate as both a personal commitment and a call for Israel to stand united in faith. The people respond with enthusiasm, affirming their commitment to serve God alone. They recall how God led them out of Egypt, performed great miracles, and protected them from their enemies. They recognize that it was God's hand that brought them to this land, and they pledge, "We too will serve the Lord, because he is our God." Joshua 24:18. But Joshua does not allow the people to make this pledge lightly. He challenges their sincerity, warning them that serving God requires true devotion, and that God is a holy and jealous God, who will not tolerate half-hearted worship. Joshua's words are stern. He wants the people to understand the gravity of their commitment. Israel responds with conviction, declaring, "No, we will serve the Lord." Joshua 24:21. To seal their commitment, Joshua creates a covenant with the people, setting up a large stone as a witness to their promises. The stone serves as a tangible reminder that Israel has chosen to follow God and uphold his commandments. This covenant renewal at Shechem marks a pivotal moment in Israel's history. The people of Israel publicly reaffirm their identity as God's chosen nation, a community bound by covenant loyalty. Joshua records these events in the book of the law of God, ensuring that future generations will remember the promises made that day. The stone, set beneath an ancient oak tree, becomes a lasting symbol of Israel's renewed dedication, a visible witness to the seriousness of their vow. After this solemn occasion, Joshua returns to his home, knowing he has faithfully fulfilled his role as Israel's leader. Not long after, he passes away at the age of 110, having left an enduring legacy as a servant of God. Israel buries Joshua in his allotted inheritance at Timnath-Sreh, in the hill country of Ephraim, honoring him as the man who led them into the Promised Land and helped secure their covenant with God. Joshua 24:29-30. Following Joshua's death, the people continue to serve the Lord, as the memory of his leadership and the covenant at Shechem remain fresh in their minds. However, as generations pass, Israel's commitment to God will be tested, and they will face challenges that threaten to pull them away from their devotion. The covenant renewal at Shechem stands as a reminder of the choice that every generation must make, to serve the Lord faithfully or to drift into idolatry. Joshua's final words echo through the ages, calling each person to declare, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." After a life filled with remarkable achievements, courageous leadership, and unwavering dedication to God, Joshua reaches the end of his journey. At the age of 110, he dies peacefully, having completed the mission that God entrusted to him. Israel honors him by laying him to rest in his inheritance at Timnath-Sreh, in the hill country of Ephraim. Joshua 24:29-30. His burial site is a place of both respect and reflection for the people of Israel, who remember him as the leader who guided them from the wilderness into the Promised Land. Joshua's final resting place in Timnath-Sreh, a town in the territory of Ephraim, is significant. It reminds Israel that their inheritance, security, and home in the land are the result of God's promises and Joshua's faithful service. The land Joshua now rests in had been a part of Canaan's hostile territory, but is now transformed into a homeland, a symbol of God's provision and Joshua's hard-won victories. As the people bury him, they reflect on all he accomplished, knowing that they were blessed to have had a leader who mirrored Moses' faithfulness and courage. Joshua was there in the earliest days, chosen to fight Israel's first battle against the Amalekites after leaving Egypt, and he remained loyal to Moses, eventually leading the Israelites to triumph in Canaan. Each event of Joshua's life becomes a lesson for Israel on what it means to serve God wholeheartedly. The impact of Joshua's leadership reverberates across the nation, as Israel continues to serve God faithfully throughout his lifetime and even beyond. Joshua's life of courage, faith, and obedience has set a standard for future generations. He was not only a powerful military leader, but also a shepherd to the people, guiding them in their spiritual walk and helping them understand the importance of loyalty to God. Joshua's unwavering faith, even in the face of daunting challenges, is one of the most enduring parts of his legacy. From the time he spied out the land of Canaan and reported back with confidence in God's promises, to his final challenge at Shechem, where he declared, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord," Joshua demonstrated that faith in God is stronger than any obstacle. This faith became a foundational principle for Israel, shaping their understanding of how to trust God even when circumstances seem overwhelming. His courage is also a hallmark of his legacy. Joshua led Israel through terrifying battles and seemingly impossible odds, often facing nations stronger and better equipped than Israel. But Joshua believed in God's promises of victory and never allowed fear to hinder him from carrying out God's commands. His bravery in the face of adversity inspired the people of Israel to conquer the land and claim it as their inheritance. His courage taught the people that, with God on their side, they could overcome any challenge. Yet, Joshua's legacy is not only about his victories in battle, it is also about his dedication to obedience. At every step, Joshua sought God's guidance, whether through the priest Eleazar or through direct instruction from the Lord. He lived by the book of the law and encouraged the people to do the same, constantly reminding them that God's blessings were tied to their faithfulness. His commitment to following God's commands demonstrated to Israel that true success and prosperity come not from human strength, but from a life aligned with God's will. This lesson of obedience becomes a cornerstone of Israel's identity, as they learn to trust and obey God, rather than relying on their own understanding. Joshua's covenant renewal at Shechem is perhaps his most lasting contribution, as it underscores the importance of Israel's relationship with God. By leading the people in a reaffirmation of their commitment to the Lord, Joshua leaves a spiritual legacy that will be remembered for generations. The stone he set up as a witness serves as a physical reminder of Israel's promise to serve God and avoid the pitfalls of idolatry. For many years after his death, the people recall this covenant, reminding themselves that they are a nation chosen and bound by a sacred vow. Joshua's leadership is a model of what it means to be a servant of God. Although he was a powerful leader, he never sought personal glory or gain. His focus was always on fulfilling God's purposes and ensuring the people remained devoted to their Creator. His life becomes an illustration of the strength that comes from humility and submission to God's will. Even after Joshua is gone, his example lives on, inspiring future leaders and generations to put their trust in the Lord. Israel's continued faithfulness after Joshua's death speaks to the profound influence he had on the nation. His leadership was so impactful that it sustained the people's devotion to God even when he was no longer present to guide them. Joshua's life and legacy serve as a testimony to the power of a life dedicated to God. He lived out the principles he taught, and his example became a guiding light for Israel. Joshua's story reminds future generations of Israel, and even those beyond Israel, of the power of faith, courage, and obedience. It serves as a call to every leader to lead with integrity and humility, putting God's commands above personal ambition. It challenges every individual to make the choice, as Joshua did, to serve God fully and completely, with unwavering commitment. In the years that follow, Israel will face challenges and trials that will test their loyalty to the covenant. But as they recall Joshua's words and the witness stone at Shechem, they are reminded of their commitment to serve the Lord alone. Joshua's legacy endures, not just in the land he helped conquer, but in the hearts of those he led to faithfulness. As his life closes, it leaves a lasting imprint on the nation, a testament to what one faithful servant of God can accomplish through courage, dedication, and an unshakable trust in God. Joshua's story is filled with themes of faith, obedience, courage, and God's faithfulness to His people, making it a foundational example of godly leadership in the Bible. May your spiritual journey be filled with God's grace and peace. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to inspire others on their walk with the Lord.